He doesn't talk trash, he doesn't beg for fights, he just wins. Merab Dvalishvili, nicknamed The Machine, has quietly become one of the most dominant forces in the UFC. With 13 straight wins, a record-breaking pressure game, and a recent north-south choke finish over Sean O'Malley at UFC 316, he's not just a fighter, he's a movement. Born in Tbilisi, Georgia, and forged in the brutal gyms of Long Island, Merab's story isn't about hype. It's about hard work, humility, and breaking opponents round by round. While others chase headlines, Merab builds legacy. This documentary dives deep into his rise from Georgian wrestler to UFC bantamweight champion, through injuries, doubt, and global recognition. This isn't just about takedowns, it's about tenacity. This is the story of Merab Dvalishvili, the fighter who proved that relentlessness beats flash every time. Merab Dvalishvili was born in January 1991 in Tbilisi, the resilient capital of Georgia. In the early 1990s, his country teetered on the edge of conflict. Power outages were daily. Families like Merab's eked out survival. Yet, for a young boy in this city of stone and sprawl, there were opportunities too, if you worked hard enough. Growing up, Merab fell into chidaoba, the traditional Georgian wrestling practiced in fields and backyards, a visceral form of self-defense rooted in cultural identity. At age 9, he began sambo and judo, diving into rigorous gym routines that fused discipline with brutality. Wrestling to him wasn't a sport, it was a testament, a way to carve an identity when most boys in Tbilisi couldn't escape survival mode. By his teens, Merab had earned a black belt in judo and was competing regularly in sambo competitions and martial arts tournaments, with no shortage of traction for an athletic-driven youth. Still, national glory was limited. Merab didn't know how high he could climb, not until he took an audacious leap. At age 21, he left behind family, language, home. He arrived in the US with limited English and no credentials, but ironclad determination. He supported himself working construction and odd jobs. Some nights, he slept in gym locker rooms, but every available moment found him on mats at Serra-Longo Fight Team in Long Island, home to elite peers like Aljamain Sterling. That transition defined him. Suddenly, discipline met world-class training. Merab's base, career honed from childhood, found purpose in pro MMA. His style, already pressure-heavy, began improving. Polished striking, smarter positioning, and evolving fight IQ grown through sparring sessions where time was always the enemy. His early professional fights in Ring of Combat showcased a fighter honed by purpose. A viral spinning back fist knockout, wrestling dominance, a steel trap pace that overwhelmed opponents in 90-second bursts. Merab wasn't flashy, he didn't need to be. He was the steady hand in chaotic combat, the machine whose power was tired muscles, not headline-grabbing flash. As UFC scouts monitored, the question was, could Georgia's machine survive on the big stage, where aces were ruthlessly exposed? That debut would tell. December 2017. Merab Dvalishvili stepped into the UFC octagon for his debut against Frankie Saenz. Far from a highlight reel, it was a gritty fight. Sequences of stabbing takedowns, clinch work, high cardio. When the bell rang, the crowd shouted split decision for Saenz. But Merab felt he had done enough. And though the judges didn't see it, Merab remained unshaken, walking from the cage as ever, calm, respectful, and determined. Minutes later, he faced a baffling loss to Ricky Seaman, bloodied, exhausted. Merab clashed with a late guillotine during the dying seconds of the fight. Ref ruled technical submission despite no tap from Merab, and the fight was over. Merab accepted it. He said later, "It drives me harder." Rebounding with 3 straight wins against Terrion Ware, Brad Katona, Casey Kenny, he switched gears. Wrestle-heavy openings, no hesitation takedowns, unwavering chains. But tonality began to shift too. He was not just competing, he was controlling. Come 2020, Merab stopped John Dodson and Gustavo Lopez using oxygen-starved tempo, debate-silencing tactics, red zone wrestling, suppressing legendary veterans into depleted reflections of themselves. Merab's ability to sustain a relentless double-leg barrage became lethal. Once, fans wondered why he didn't show off flashy moves. They now respected his brutal efficiency. Then came September 2021 against Marlon Moraes. 28 years old, striking-hungry Moraes nearly finished Merab in round 1. But Merab responded as if hardwired for survival. Takedowns propelled him, and by round 2, he unleashed a pummeling ground-and-pound finish. Performance of the night. It was more than victory. It was vindication. The machine digested the fight and turned it into meal. Each night, Merab's reputation spread beyond fans into analyst circles, debated online, labeled death by takedown. Eventually, he became the bantamweight's dark horse vessel, the threat no one could ignore. But someone still wore the belt at the top. He had pushed legends. He had silenced doubters. Now, his moment to claim gold was coming, and facing past champions would test his limits. In August 2022, the UFC matched Merab Dvalishvili versus Jose Aldo. Aldo, fast, legendary, a former featherweight dominator known for lethal kicks and spells of dominance, was tough. Few fighters have ever slowed Aldo's assault, but Merab stayed in his preferred range. He lifted Aldo twice. He settled into range-heavy work. Each shift of posture, each takedown, chipped at Aldo's tank and psyche. When judges chose Merab, it was no fluke victory. It was pressure forged on concrete mats. Next came March 2023, and Merab faced his Everest, Petr Yan, the former bantamweight champion and striking virtuoso. When the cage locked shut, Merab melted Yan with volume. 49 takedowns in one fight. Yan looked bewildered. His corners suggested fatigue while Merab ground and pumped. The final horn rang. Merab had claimed victory via crushing decision. In one night, he set UFC's all-time takedown record and shattered folklore by dominating an elite former champion. By February 2024, the stage grew. Henry Cejudo, the two-division champion, stood in Merab's path. Known for combat Olympics, elite wrestling, and lethal striking, Cejudo was a test. The fight shook the faith of many, but Merab walked through the fire. Grappling exchanges erupted from the first minute. A struggle, a rebuttal. Merab pressed forward, chunked takedowns, stayed close when Cejudo countered. Round by round, he didn't fade. By decision, Merab had defeated champions. He had announced himself. Then came the climactic night. UFC 306, September 2024, in Vegas's Sphere. Across the cage, laced in pink, walked Sean O'Malley, viral phenom, knockout artist. The clash was electric. Flashy versus relentless. When the horn sounded, Merab's performance was clinical, takedown after takedown. He disassembled O'Malley by relentless forward motion. The unanimous decision accompanied legendary stats and over 6.5 million arena gate. The machine had silenced the siren of social media. September 14, 2024, will mark the night Merab Dvalishvili stepped into a global spotlight and emerged not just as another champion, but as a cultural shift. UFC 306 took place inside the Sphere in Las Vegas, designed to immerse audiences with lights, sound, and spectacle. The perfect stage for an underdog grand slam. Across the cage strode Sugar Sean O'Malley, the bantamweight's sexiest star. Viral entrances, custom trunks, social media firepower. Every element of his persona was about production value. Contrast that with Merab. No flashy walkout song, no glittering attire, just focused calm, and the flag of Georgia draped across his shoulders. The fight began with the difference in approach. O'Malley jabbed, footed, angled, a sniper's precision. His first few moments were textbook striker warfare. Then Merab turned the lights on. A short double-leg takedown at the 90-second mark, followed by another, then another. Within round 1, he had dictated the narrative. Rounds 2 through 4 were a demonstration in iron-jawed striving. Merab imposed wrestling dominance, mounts, positional control, cage grinding. O'Malley tried to regain space with crisp counters and flashy kicks, but Merab didn't yield an inch. His chin, unfazed, his gas tank, bottomless. The final round saw subtlety work beneath the carnage, leg kicks softening O'Malley's base, body shots peeling away defenses. Another takedown sealed the round. When the scores echoed unanimous decision, the weight of Merab's discipline was unmistakable. He'd beaten a star, stunned the world, banked a performance that transcended highlight clips. This was not a fluke. He didn't just earn the belt. He claimed ownership with every heartbeat that never slowed. The arena erupted in respect for a fighter who didn't beg to be noticed. He made them pay attention. Merab Dvalishvili arrived at UFC 311, held on January 18, 2025, at the Intuit Dome in Inglewood, California, facing undefeated contender Umar Nurmagomedov, cousin of Khabib, and a booming prospect in the bantamweight division. This was Merab's first moment to prove he wasn't a lucky champion. This was the test of a true title reign. The build-up wasn't drama-charged, no trash talk, no conflict. Instead, there was cautious optimism. Nurmagomedov, with a flawless record and flashy grappling pedigree, was touted as the perfect foil for Merab's grinder style. UFC insiders whispered if Merab could dominate this, he'd slam the door shut on the division forever. But Sunday night could have spelled disaster. Weeks earlier, Merab had battled a brutal staph infection in his leg, nearly requiring amputation. He also carried a lingering back injury from heavy training sessions. Doctors questioned whether he'd even make the walk. Merab's stoic demeanor barely cracked. He said nothing, trained through the pain, focused on lifting that belt again. Fight night began cautiously. Nurmagomedov struck fluidly, jabbing, moving, keeping Merab at bay. But neither fighter landed hard, and Merab's gas tank was humming, untouched. Mid-round, Merab executed a textbook double leg, landing in half guard. From there, he chained takedown after takedown, landings and resets. He planted position, wore down mobility, and dialed in. Nurmagomedov defended valiantly, but by round 2 he looked tired, frustrated, suffocated. Round 3 became history. Merab lobbed feints, set up another takedown, collapsed into mount, rained elbows, and asserted control. The Intuit Dome buzzed. Only one champion in charge. Nurmagomedov showed heart. But Merab's persistence dominated the narrative. Judges ruled unanimous in his favor. Merab extended his reign and set a new battleground for bantamweight hierarchy. But UFC 311 offered more. He earned a Fight of the Night bonus, a reward for performance under siege, and he also broke the all-time takedown record in his division by 5 more, cementing his nickname, The Machine. Even battling infection and pain, he delivered. Post-fight interviews revealed his mindset. I wasn't just defending a belt. I was saving a career, proving sacrifice matters. His calmness, despite adversity, became part of the narrative. But the toughest challenge was still ahead. 5 months later, a rematch with Sean O'Malley awaited, this time in his 13th straight win, and potentially his most spectacular finish. June 28, 2025, UFC 316. The setting, Prudential Center in Newark. The occasion, Merab Dvalishvili versus Sean O'Malley II. What started as a clear rivalry turned into a defining statement. This wasn't just a rematch. It was an exclamation point on the era of The Machine. O'Malley had rebuilt momentum after his UFC 306 loss. He stayed active, sharp, and vocal. Fans wondered if lightning could strike in reverse. Could Sugar Sean figure out the puzzle? Could he keep the fight on the feet long enough to use his range and striking? He told everyone he'd never been more ready. Merab didn't say much. He trained in silence, wrestling, grinding, preparing for another 5 rounds of war. But it didn't go 5 rounds. From the opening bell, Merab wasted 0 time. He closed distance with absolute focus, absorbing O'Malley's jabs with minimal damage, ducking under and securing a lightning-fast takedown. The crowd barely settled into their seats before O'Malley was on his back. But this time, Merab had something new in his arsenal. This wasn't just a rinse-and-repeat grind. He had evolved. In the 3rd round, Merab passed guard, circled to north-south, and began applying pressure. Subtle at first. Then suddenly, he locked in the hold. A north-south choke. Rarely seen. Brutally effective. O'Malley struggled for space, kicked his legs, but the grip was vice-tight. Within seconds, it was over. Sean O'Malley tapped. Merab Dvalishvili submitted one of the most elusive strikers in MMA inside 1 round, with a choke many fans had never seen in a UFC title bout. And in doing so, he extended his win streak to 13, defended the belt twice, and recorded his first career UFC submission, all against the same man he had previously dismantled with wrestling. The crowd inside MSG erupted. Dana White stood with his arms raised. Color commentators struggled to keep up with what they'd just seen. No one had expected that. This was not Merab the Grinder, this was Merab the Finisher. The post-fight narrative shifted immediately. Merab wasn't just the best bantamweight on the planet, he was the most dominant in UFC history. Fighters like Dominic Cruz, TJ Dillashaw, and Henry Cejudo once held that title. But none had strung together this level of streak, this style of suffocation, this constant improvement. Media praised the execution. Fans embraced the moment. Even O'Malley, in defeat, gave credit. That choke was tight. He's the real deal. And the UFC, they now had a problem. No one in the division wanted the smoke. In the days after UFC 316, Merab Dvalishvili stood alone in the cage, belt over his shoulder, and mindset sharpened. 14 fights, 2 title defenses, 1 submission win against a high-level striker. The UFC bantamweight division had never felt so overwhelmed. But for Merab, the path forward wasn't dictated by hype, it was by purpose. At press conferences, he remained calm and measured. No trash talk, only gratitude. He spoke of discipline, humility, and sweat, not spectacle. He thanked his team, his gym, and the immigrant story that brought him to the cusp of greatness. Fans loved it. They saw in Merab something rare, a champion who embraced silence and let performance do the talking. Yet there were questions the world wanted answered. His coach, Ray Longo, mused in interviews, should Merab move up or stay and cement his reign? 2 champs in 2 divisions, 2 belts, 2 legacies. But Merab didn't walk into featherweight hype. He walked into authenticity. When asked, he simply said, "If the belt's there and that's what the team wants, I'll go." He sounded calm, confident, less like a fighter staking territory, and more like a craftsman planning the next milestone. Meanwhile, back in Tbilisi, work continued. Merab was not just training a new generation, he was building infrastructure. Wrestling clinics called Machine Days sprang up in villages. Plaques hung celebrating his story. He made surprise visits. No media, no fanfare, just hoods and mats and kids learning technique. His coaches say he stayed longer than expected, showing new fighters the same grind he mastered at home. In the States, Merab mentored emerging bantamweights at Longo. His influence was visible in the up-and-comers, who now train like fire hydrants of wrestling. Chasing the same engine Merab built, they'd emulate his fitness work, fight IQ, and pace strategy. It became less about winning for themselves and more about preserving a philosophy. But the heart of the story is still in the octagon. UFC 319 was rumored to offer Merab a champion versus champion showdown, against a rising name who had dominion at featherweight. All signs pointed to Merab staying hungry. He hadn't stopped evolving. His last fight wasn't a peak, it was a springboard. He was no longer just a fighter, he was a visionary, leading his division, lifting his nation, and stressing that greatness isn't just belts, it's what you leave behind. In interviews, he began talking about legacy, not popularity, about representing Georgia, about proving to every kid in Tbilisi that a basement wrestler from broken blocks can become history in the biggest arenas on earth. By mid-2025, Merab Dvalishvili wasn't floating in a bubble of hype. He was actively shaping his next path with discipline and dedication. After back-to-back title defenses at UFC 311 and UFC 316, he solidified his place at the top. There was no bravado, no early celebration. Instead, Merab remained intensely private, turning right back to the grind inside Longo's New York gym. He started a rigorous schedule of daily wrestling sessions and hybrid strength circuit workouts. Training partners note that even after a championship win, Merab would do extra rounds of takedown drills. While others took breaks, he worked uninterrupted. His team adjusted conditioning to maintain stamina levels above all else, the engine at the core of his success. Outside the cage, Merab kept a low profile. Social media updates were sparse, mostly training clips or quiet expressions of gratitude. There have been no public calls for super fights, no flashy contracts, no noise, and that control became remarkable. In an MMA world awash with drama, Merab offered something rare: calm, consistency, and confidence through action. UFC President Dana White hinted at more frequent fights for all active champions, and Merab fit that mold. He's ready to defend again in the fall, maybe December, White remarked in a recent press scrum. Behind the scenes, Merab's team is indeed preparing for another contender. Reports suggest names like Umar Nurmagomedov or Corey Sandhagen are under consideration, depending on medical clearance and stylistic matchups. In press interviews, Merab stayed purposeful. "I'm not chasing history," he said. "I'm focused on the next man in front of me." His humility has been refreshing and rare for a champion. Meanwhile, his popularity hasn't plateaued, it's grown. MMA fans praise his work ethic. Pundits commend his structural dominance. Merab's walkouts draw steady cheers, but not hysteria. His connection is one of respect, not flash. For casual viewers turned fans, the machine operates with predictable excellence. Back in Georgia, there's been buzz about youth training camps he has occasionally visited, though nothing officially funded. Still, seeing the hometown hero return to the mats, once in interviews, reveals a future quiet influence in grassroots MMA training there. The true pivot, however, is Merab's acceptance of legacy. At UFC 316, he spoke of earning respect the right way. And now, he's choosing substance over flash. No matter what comes next, be it another defense, a late career move to featherweight, or championship alignment with Brazil or Europe, Merab remains focused. The belt is his responsibility, not a reward. Beyond media obligations and fight camps, Merab is still building around the core principle that has driven him from Georgia to Prudential Center in Newark: relentless improvement. By mid-2025, Merab Dvalishvili isn't just a champion, he's a movement within the UFC bantamweight division. With 13 straight wins, a pair of dominant title defenses against O'Malley, and a grind-forged victory over Sandhagen pending, his reputation isn't whispered, it's commanding. Yet Merab remains the quiet architect of his trajectory, choosing substance over spectacle. In interviews, he continues to echo a single mindset: "I'm building something lasting." That quiet drive persisted when Dana White mentioned plans for 2 more title defenses in 2025. If Merab agrees. Merab agreed because he views consistency as legacy. But what does that legacy look like? Inside Georgia, his shadow is growing. While not televised or branded, he makes regular trips back, visiting gyms, training kids, answering questions. The local wrestling circuits speak of the machine's advice, shared through interpreters, scribbled instructions, added drills. It's quieter than fanfare, but its effect speaks louder. Merab isn't just a hero, he's a builder. In Long Island, his training influence is visible. Protégés at Serra Longo mimic his relentless pace and unshakable defense. Many are now top 15 flyweights and bantamweights, wielding Merab's pressure style with their own additions. To them, Dvalishvili isn't just a champion, he's a coach inspiration. Meanwhile, the bantamweight division has fractured. Fighters like Umar Nurmagomedov have called him out, dismissing Merab's takedown-heavy style as outdated. Yet Nurmagomedov also acknowledged Merab as toughest guy I've studied. Any attempt to dethrone him now would come not through grime, but evolution. The fight to come might be with Sandhagen again, or a shock move to featherweight. Merab has spoken cryptically about ambition beyond division, which keeps speculation alive. And fans? Merab has collected them. They respect a champion who doesn't solicit attention, but earns it. They call him champion's champion. Not because he screams it, but because he's earned it. Night after night, grind after grind. But every legend faces a defining question. Will he stay on top or transcend it? With fitness coaches already adjusting his fight schedule to avoid injury overload and mentors advising careful media strategies, Merab appears to be playing long-game chess, not short-sprint boxing. For now, Merab Dvalishvili's legacy is clear. A champion who fights without ego, moves without noise, and wins not for headlines, but for history. But the real test is still ahead. Whether he chooses himself, or as he's often suggested, whether he can become something bigger than himself, a role model, trainer, or ambassador beyond the octagon. The closing highlight? He often says, the fight ends, but what remains is what we build. And though his final chapter isn't written yet, Merab stands as a living testament to creation through consistency. Merab Dvalishvili didn't need trash talk. He didn't need viral moments or controversy. All he needed was grit, layered with discipline, forged in wrestling mats from Tbilisi to Long Island, and sharpened against the best fighters in the world. While others chased hype, he chased excellence, and along the way, he built one of the most relentless legacies in UFC bantamweight history. He may not light up headlines, but he dismantles divisions. His victories aren't just technical, they're mental, psychological, spiritual. And what makes Merab dangerous isn't just his pressure, it's his purpose. From first takedown to world title, from submission wins to silent mentoring, Merab Dvalishvili has proven that legacy isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just relentless. Thank you for watching. If you found this story inspiring, make sure to like, subscribe, and drop a comment. Who should we cover next? Let us know and keep chasing greatness.